Hey, everybody, welcome to a bonus episode of Rip and Destroy. I'm TJ,
I am Mike.
and we are doing episode 33 and a third tonight. We do like to take advantage of our numbering here on the show. If you recall, episode 11 was our episode on Kiss Spinal Tap moments, which went to 11. If we remember, episode 21, I believe, came out right around Valentine's Day, and there just happened to be 21 Kiss songs with the word love in the title. So we talked about all of those. And so since we just finished episode 33, we thought, why not do an episode 33 and a third and talk about records? They may or may not be Kiss records. We're going to find out what happens. But I think what we're going to do is we're just going to pull a few records from our collection, tell you what we like about them, whether it's what we like about the music on it at that particular album, or what we just like about the record ourselves. We're just going to do a little show and tell, a little showing off, and maybe turn some people onto some stuff they haven't heard before because we both have very diverse tastes in our music, and that's something we'd like to celebrate that diversity and spread the word.
Absolutely. Yeah, you sent me a text with this idea and right away I'm like, man, challenge accepted. But it was a challenge because, you have to go through everything. And for myself, and I'm sure for you, and I'm sure for, countless others, these records have stories, behind
Yeah,
them. And there's just so much you can go into and so many different things that you could cover. So how do you narrow that down to just a few? So
right. Well, we don't necessarily have to, so we I think we just picked a few that I think we thought were interesting, and we're going to see how this goes, and by the end of the episode, we might have a surprise for you.
all right, so who's going to get us started? Well, it was your idea, so I think you should do the honors and kick it
Sure,
off.
sure. I can go first. I'll show you what I picked first. So we have how many? Let me ask you this: how many Iron Maiden records do you have?
Oh, let's see
Do you have
one.
all of them? Do you have most of them?
I don't, because I started collecting vinyl late. I think probably three or four
Okay,
in my collection.
okay,
Yeah,
okay. I bet you don't have this one.
I do not. Is that Ed Hunter?
No, this is called Edward the Great,
I
the
don't.
greatest
No, I
hits.
don't.
Okay, this was released in 2002. It's on EMI Records. It is an official Iron Maiden release, but I think it was only put out in the UK. It's got 16 tracks on it, ranging from Run to the Hills all the way up through like Fear the Dark Live. Wicker Man is on there. Funeral, Clairvoyant, Holy Smoke, Bring Your Daughter, 2 Minutes to Midnight, Wasted Years. Number of the Beast. So like most of the classics there. But it's got a very regal photo painting of Edward the Great himself. It is a gatefold. Gatefold has a little write up by Steve Harris talking about the 25th anniversary of the band, and a nice little group shot there. And what's cool about it, I actually didn't buy this. One of my clients actually gifted this to me. So shout out to Pata. Right on, brother. The inner sleeves have lyrics. This one's got kind of a cool
Oh, look at
pattern,
that.
kind of a
Yeah.
wallpaper pattern going on there. The other inner sleeve has more lyrics and then another band photo. But what is pretty cool about it, and this is not usually my thing, but it is actually a double picture disc.
Hmm.
And side one's got the cover art.
Mhm.
Side two's got a classic group shot. And the second disc has kind of a family crest kind of a thing. It has Up the Irons on top and a 666 in the middle and a Edward the Great down there. And then another group shot on the back with someone a little more, I guess, recent to the release of the album. But
Right.
as you can see, that Bruce has short hair.
Yeah,
So
it's like Brave New World era.
right, yeah, yeah. So that's since you've heard all the songs that are on it, and musically, it's nothing to write home about. But just for being a cool import, I don't know how many of these were made. I don't know how rare it is in the UK, but I had certainly never seen it when my buddy gave it to me. So yeah, there you go, Edward the Great by Iron Maiden.
Great choice. I love that cover for a couple reasons. I think it's really cool that there's no Iron Maiden logo on it, that you could just look
No,
at it and know
hmm
immediately. Of
yeah,
course, like just about all their covers, it's a fantastic painting, but it's also very appropriate for you, being that you got dogs, man.
got four giant dogs, just like we have here at home. So
Great choice. Great choice.
thank you, buddy. What do you have for your first one?
Well, for me, I had to go way back to the beginning, the very, very beginning, because when I was about 5 years old, we were in Butler, Pennsylvania, and downstairs we had, the big wicker set up with the record player and the stereo. And I would go down there and put the giant cans on and listen to singles, but the stuff I was listening to was stuff that a 5-year-old kid would listen to until, for whatever reason, my parents brought home this record. It's called K-tel Rock 80. And this compilation was my gateway drug to music, to punk rock, to what it means to have a favorite song. And it's just to this day I'll still put it on and it brings back a lot of memories. And I'll go through the track list in just a second.
Please.
But k-tel, they started off Canadian company doing like selling gimmicks like the Vegematic, the Popeil stuff. And then at some point they started getting into music and putting these compilations together, like 25 country hits and they sold just thousands and thousands of these compilation records. And this was the only one that my parents ever got. But side one, track one is the song that I decided when I was 5 years old was going to be my first favorite song, and that was Cars by Gary Newman.
Nice.
And we had Pretenders, Brass in Pocket, which is especially cool because my mom went to school with Chrissy Hind in Akron, Ohio.
Shut up.
A true story. And same school that I believe it's the same school that Devo went to.
Oh,
You
probably.
had Driver's Seat by Sniffin' Tears, Cruel to Be Kind by Nick Lowe. We have Is She Really Going Out with Him by Joe Jackson, which is just a banger. I love that song.
Yeah.
Heartbreaker by Pat Benatar and Call Me by Blondie.
Nice.
And then side two. And I noticed when I revisit a lot of the records I listened to when I was very young, I tend to really gravitate towards one side because I was listening to Cheap Trick live at Budokan recently, and I realized I was somewhat unfamiliar with some of the songs on side two or side three, and it was because I loved side one and pretty much only listened to it. But this starts off with, do you remember rock and roll radio? Which means when I was 5 years old, I was loving the Ramones, even
Yes.
though it was a song produced by Phil Spector, who did everything he could just to bury the song. It's still a kick-ass song. And, going back to, our show, it was a great song that Kiss covered. We have My Sharona by the Knack, I Want You to Want Me by Cheap Trick, who I'm going to go see this weekend.
Nice.
Hold On by Ian Gom, One Way or Another by Blondie. And that was the track I invited my parents to come down and listen to because I loved it. I remember them dancing to that song. It's a great memory. We Live for Love by Pat Benatar and Pop Music by M. So it it was just a really fun way to get introduced to a lot of really great music.
That is great. Yeah, it's an interesting selection, especially to be exposed to when you're five.
Right.
That's great.
Thank you.
Awesome. Love it. So for this one, I don't have a ton of Japanese records, but this one, so I do, even though we're not really talking about Kiss records, this one does have a Kiss connection. Do you remember the band EZO?
I do.
Yeah, Japanese band
Mhm.
that Gene Simmons produced. I think he brought him over, helped them learn to sing phonetically in English. They released a self-titled album in, I want to say it was like what, 87-ish, maybe 86,
Mhm.
87. Then I think a year or two later, they released a second album called Fire Fire, and then they kind of disappeared. Well, before they were EZO in America, they were a band called Flatbacker in Japan. And this is their second album from Japan. The second album is called Asa. Their first album, I believe, was called War Accident. Now, EZO was they were pretty cool. They were kind of harsh, kind of edgy. They sounded a lot like Wasp, to be honest, kind of like
Mhm.
a Japanese Wasp. Well, the stuff that they did as Flatbacker is heavier and thrashier and harder edged, and it's way better. You can find both these albums, Asa and if you just look up Flatbacker on Spotify, and you can actually find them both on there. But just out of curiosity, before there even was a Spotify, I picked this up on Discogs just because I had always been curious about what they sounded like back then. It's got a cool cover of the singer. The singer and the drummer eventually wound up in Loudness. And then I think actually, I mean, they didn't start Loudness, but they joined Loudness sometime like the early '90s, and then they left that band as well. But then Back just has a group shot of them. They weren't super glammy. They were leaning a little bit into the what they call in Japan, they call visual K, which is bands that have like a really extreme like visual style, like humongous hair and kind of like Seiki Matu that we've talked about
Mhm.
before, makeup and costumes and X Japan wasn't quite that, but a little bit. But so they're leaning a little bit into that. It's just a cool record. It's good stuff. It's heavy. Like I said, it's way like his vocals are a little grit, like deeper and grittier than they were on the EZO record. Of course, it's largely in Japanese, although all of the song titles are in English. And it's funny because we have also in the past talked about inappropriate Kiss lyrics uh, and things that didn't age well. Well, I think Flatbacker, by the way, is actually a Japanese colloquialism for prostitute.
Mm.
So track 5 on side A is called Deep Insert. So I'm just going to leave that there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, this is kick ass. If you guys have not are familiar at all with EZO or want to dip your toe into some Japanese metal, this is a great place to start. This is from the mid '80s. I want to say like '86, and yeah, it's kick ass. And I was very excited to get a copy of this.
Right on. Great choice.
Thanks.
There's one thing that's kind of been lost to time, and that's like, say you fell asleep before Headbangers Ball came on. You know, there was a time where you would buy, or at least I would pick out a record just because it looked cool. And you take it home and hear it for the first time because you couldn't go online and check it out. And if you couldn't borrow it from a friend, every once in a while you just find a record like that and you're curious, take it home and hopefully it sounds great.
Yeah.
And
Oh, and one
I was
other
looking
thing.
at that cover thinking that's the kind of cover that would make me want to take that home and spin it.
Oh, hell yeah. One other thing that's an interesting point of trivia is that on their first record, there's a song called Death Wish. And the main riff of that song became the intro riff of House of a Thousand Pleasures, which was the first song on the EZO record. So they actually even recycled a little bit of riffage. But again, I think it sounded cooler on the Flatbacker record.
All right, number two. This is one of the first records I thought about when you put the challenge out there. This is a record called White Birch by an early 90s emo band called Codeine. And they're better known for their first record that came out in 1991, a record called Frigid Stars. But the follow-up to me is it's just light years better. And this one for me is it's a really, really heavy record and not heavy in the way it sounds. It's just this is like a portal for me. This is a time machine back to the, mid late 90s when I was playing in a band and we were lucky enough to get a lot of shows out of state. One in particular was a road trip that we took to Chicago to play at the Fireside Bowl. And every time I hear this record, and it was, we drive all the way to Chicago from Green Bay, Wisconsin, play the show, and then drive back. So it was
Which
an
we
amazing.
should mention for our viewers is like a 3 or 4 hour drive.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And so just imagine, like I'll paint the picture real quick. You've driven all the way to Chicago, you've unloaded the gear, you got to play with some really kick-ass bands in a place that you're really excited to play at. And then the show's over and you're packing up and you're driving home and it's probably, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. You're on the highway and Greg, the singer in the band, he worked at Exclusive Company where you got your shirt.
Mhm.
So he was always hip to like really cool records. And he turned me on to Portishead and he turned me on to this band Codeine. And every time I hear this record, I'm back in that van. The air's coming in through the window and I can feel the seat, and feel the wind. And it just takes me right back there. And it's a really unique and special record. It's very, very slow. And yeah, it's unlike anything I ever heard. I mean, songs like Sea and Lost Leader, and a great, great song. If you're going to sample one track from White Birch, I would recommend a song called Vacancy because the chorus says, look under the bed, there's no ghosts that I could see. But for me, this record is just full of ghosts. And, when I want to spend some quality time with them, I will spin this record and it just takes me back. So love this album. Can't recommend it highly enough. Codeine, White Birch.
That's really cool. I love it when records can do that, when they
Yeah.
can just like conjure up feelings and moods that you haven't felt in decades.
Yep.
That's awesome. That's
Me
that's the
too.
power of music, man. It sounds cheesy, but it's true.
It's so true. So true.
Yeah, nice. Well, speaking of feelings and of places that we love and places that we remember. So, okay, I'm 2 for 2 on metal records here, right?
Yeah.
So I've done Iron Maiden and Flatbacker. But, look, as we saw in that recent interview, Gene and Paul are huge music nerds, but they are not the only music nerds in the scene, my friends. Me and Mike are really huge music nerds to the point where we do love all different kinds of music. So I'm going to do a complete 180 from the metal right now, and I'm going to bust out some New Orleans jazz.
Love it.
Yeah. So, as you know, I am madly in love with the city of New Orleans. And as a result, I also have come to love New Orleans music, which is something that I never would have expected. So, if you're not really familiar with what they call like traditional jazz or trad jazz in New Orleans, it's basically what you would recognize as like Dixieland jazz, okay? When the Saints go marching in and just another, closer walk with thee and St. James Infirmary and stuff like that. What you don't realize is that if you have no interest in that music, you go to New Orleans and suddenly you start liking that music because it's everywhere and it is the sound of the city. And if you fall in love with the city, you're going to fall in love with trad New Orleans jazz. And I did. I've actually got an sizable section of my record collection that's just labeled New Orleans. And I've got a huge collection of New Orleans music. And this is Sweet Emma the Bell Gal. And she is playing with it says the Bell Gal and her Dixieland Boys. But really this is actually the first record on Preservation Hall record label. Now, Preservation Hall, you probably know, is like the legendary venue in New Orleans where this music, is played and comes from. It's still there. It's still ancient. I've been there. It was an incredible emotional experience just to be there, especially because I knew that my dad liked this kind of music. I mean, my dad liked a lot of different music too, but my dad always talked about like, Preservation Hall. And the first time I went to New Orleans, he's like, "Did you go to Preservation Hall?" And I hadn't, but my wife and I have visited New Orleans over 2 dozen times, and it wasn't until maybe like our 23rd, 24th trip that we actually finally made it to Preservation Hall. And I sat there and we had a great time. And I sat there and all I could think of was, my dad would not only love this, but he would be so happy that I'm here, right? So, anyways, this is the first release on Preservation Hall Records or their record label, and they've got a real weird history because I've tried to piece together their discography, and they had a weird numbering system, and some stuff doesn't line up and make sense, but that's okay. That's part of the fun. Anyways, this was their very first release on that label, 1961. You put it on, and like I said, it's Dixieland jazz. It's you may or may not like it now, but if you love New Orleans, like I said, you will come to appreciate this music. And this is probably the oldest New Orleans record that I have in my collection. And it's just cool for a piece of history. And like I said, to connect something to connect me to a place that I love. It's fun stuff.
Great choice. And I had the pleasure of visiting New Orleans. I've only been there one time in my life with you and with your wife. And there are so many really cool takeaways. Of course, there's the food, there's the beignets, there's the hurricanes. And
Hmm.
but when people ask me about New Orleans or if I tell somebody about it, the very first thing I mention every single time is the music. And I
Yeah.
got exposed to so much amazing music because I heard gospel when I was there, and I heard the jazz you're talking about,
Hmm.
and I actually saw like a marching band playing it as they came down a street. And there's big brick buildings and two brick buildings with about, probably 10 feet in between them and a wall in the back. And I saw this marching band march directly into this crevice between these two buildings where you can't even get out of. And it was just the strangest thing. I'm like, there's nobody in there. There's just two between two buildings. And then they turned and they faced a brick wall. And the sound that came off that brick wall when they pointed their horns directly at it
Hmm.
was nothing short of just majestic. It was
Yeah.
incredible. It was,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that was, I don't know what band that was. That was what they basically just refer to as a brass band down there. You've got bands like, yeah, Rebirth Brass Band, the Stooges. There's a whole bunch of them. And that's so cool because they play that kind of real traditional music. That's not quite Dixieland jazz, but it's almost like that mixed with kind of a little more of like a rock attitude, but it's all played on like, wind instrument or, trombones and horns and stuff. And that is something so that's so cool because young people are into that music and young people play that music. It's like the kids that you think are just going to be into hip hop and emo and pop or whatever, but down there they learn that music and they grow up loving that music. And it's just one of the coolest things about New Orleans that's so unique to it is the way music is integrated into the culture down there. And it's like no place else in America.
True. Thank you for sharing that. Great
Yeah,
choice.
thank you.
Okay, so
Last one. What do we got?
Well, keeping with the theme of not sharing all metal records, I've got a record by Ella Fitzgerald. Now,
Nice.
Ella Fitzgerald is the be all end all greatest singer in the history of mankind, and it's always going to be that way. It's always going to be that way. And this record in particular is very, very special to me. This is the one record, it's a 45, that if God forbid the house is on fire, this is the one I'm grabbing on the way out the door. And it's a familiar song. It's called Cry Me a River. And it was supposed to be in the soundtrack to a movie called Pete Kelly's Blues in 1955, and Ella Fitzgerald was going to sing it. But then the producers got wind of that, and they said that they had to change the lyrics because a woman of color wouldn't know to sing a lyric like "Told me that love was too plebeian." They're like, so you have to change it. And of course, Ella said, nope. So they took the song and they gave it to somebody named Julie London, who did the soundtrack and got a number one hit out of it. It's the only one she ever had. And then years later, in 1961, we finally got to hear Ella Fitzgerald's version of Cry Me a River. And like everything else she ever did, it's perfect. And hell yeah, she says plebeian in
Yeah.
this song. And it's just incredible. And nobody ever listened to the Julie London version again, ever. It's a footnote in history, and this is the one as well it should be. But in addition to just simply having this single, this is one that is actually from the personal collection of Sammy Davis Jr. I have two of his 45s. I have a Kinks record. And then later, when I saw that there was an Ella Fitzgerald, I absolutely had to have it because Sammy, like everybody else, kind of just adored Ella Fitzgerald. And like Frank and everybody else, was just completely in awe of her talent. And the thought of him owning this record and listening to it is just really incredible because of her story, the story behind this song. And if you read either one of his books, especially the second book, Why Me, you know that Sammy's life is just so inspiring and that he too being a person of color back then, getting paid to play these venues that he wasn't allowed to eat or stay in. And the fact that he went on to marry, my Brit, which was scandalous at the time because she was Swedish, and every day was bomb threats and and racism and things that I can't even begin to imagine. So there's just so much history and so much strength and magic to this one record that to me it's one of my favorite things I own. And it's also just a damn good song. So give it a spin. Cry Me a River by Ella Fitzgerald.
That's amazing, dude. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for the history lesson. That's incredible history, and then the fact that that record has probably the strongest mojo of anything you own.
True, true.
Damn,
Yeah,
that is a magical object, man. Do not part with that. That's incredible.
true story. Thank you. Thank you.
Nice, cool. Well, this was super fun, man. I don't know. What do you think? Did you have fun? Did you do it? I think it was a pretty good idea.
I had a blast. We should maybe, I don't know, do it again sometime.
I think we should do it maybe kind of regularly.
What are you
I
thinking?
think I'm 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 thinking spinoff. I'm thinking this might end up being a new show.
I'm in.
You're in?
I'm in.
All
Yeah.
right. I don't know what the release schedule is or the recording schedule is going to be, but I think this has just become the unofficial official first episode of Rip and Destroy presents Sit and Spin. What do you think?
I'm in.
All
Yep,
right.
let's do this.
Yeah, let's do this. This was cool. We got plenty of records to pick from, plenty of bullshit to talk, and yeah, man, we will see you next time on our regularly scheduled episode of Rip and Destroy. But sometime not too long after that, we will see you on episode 2 of Rip and Destroy presents Sit and Spin.
Kill the power, Phil. Kill the power.